Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the We Love Sundays podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week. We're so appreciative. Obviously, this week's going to be a little bit different. We don't have Iril or Pastor Alberto with us. However, that does not mean we're not going to bring you fire. I'm going to sit here and talk to you for 30 minutes. I'm just kidding. We were actually privileged to interview Dr. Jason Kennedy, a dear friend of mine, a few months back. Dr. Jason Kennedy is the lead pastor of Bakersfield First Assembly, a legacy church that's been around for over 100 years. He's also been the executive pastor at a few different mega churches from Texas to California, and a former university professor at universities like Vanguard. So we're excited to just dig into this conversation, give you insight into what it's like pastoring at those different levels, at those different capacities. And it's a really fun, awesome conversation that we get to have with them. So without further ado, welcome Dr. Jason Kennedy. Thanks for doing this, Pastor Jason. We have Dr. Jason Kennedy here with us.
You just found that out right, and now you're wildly impressed.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't know who I had in front of me, and now I'm nervous, I'm shaking, no. But thanks for taking the time and doing this. It's awesome. Just for the viewer's sake, kind of the goal of the podcast is just to get as many, to get pastors on that we really respect, that we know are doing things that are really moving the needle in the kingdom, and can be looked to as thought leaders in either specific areas of pastoral ministry, but you're more of a generalist, I would assume. You have a lot of experience in different capacities. So would you mind just introducing yourself, who you are, what you've done? Yeah.
Oh, man, my resume of accomplishments are so many. So I'm Jason Kennedy. I pastor Bakersfield First Assembly of God here in Bakersfield. It's Bakersfield, California. It's a 101-year-old church.
And you've been the pastor the whole time.
I've been the pastor for 101 years. I don't look it. No, I've been the pastor here for about a year. Been leading the church through a lot of change. Prior to that, I've been an executive pastor. I've taught in seminaries. I've been a children's pastor, youth pastor, small group leader, small group pastor, et cetera, et cetera. So it might look like I'm not really good at any of those jobs because I keep having different ones, but pastoring, senior pastoring is probably where I feel most comfortable. Yeah. And so, that's me. I'm married. I've got 2 kids. I got one in college and one who is a sophomore in high school here locally in Bakersfield.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to hear more about kind of the past and how that's transitioned into taking over at BFA, because I know you were at a pretty large church before.
Yeah, Visalia First. I was helping them with a small college idea that they had. I was doing that for 2 years. Visalia First runs anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000. I was one of their executive pastors, and I was one of their team teachers as well. But prior to that, I was in Dallas for 7 years pastoring. I'm from Dallas, so we got out to California by doing the college thing because I usually keep one foot in church world, and I love education, and so I took a flyer on this and did it for a little bit and thought, you know what, I really miss pastoring. I don't like the administrative work of running a school. I just like teaching students. So I continue to teach students, I have a couple of different professorships at Vanguard and at Southwestern, some adjunct professorships, and then I do some teaching around the world. On theology and leadership. Those are kind of my sweet spots.
That's awesome. So BFA's been around for 101 years.
101 years, yes. I think I'm the 23rd or 24th pastor that they've had.
So why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I think Bakersfield First has always had kind of a large history of success. So in the 40s and 50s, you had really successful pastors. One of them was C.M. Ward. He's kind of a legend in the Assemblies of God.
Yeah.
and he went from Bakersfield First to start a national ministry called Revival Time Ministries. And then, another well-known pastor is Fred Cottrell, who was a Battle of Bastogne tank commander in World War II. His desk is actually my desk in my office. Yeah, I feel powerful when I sit behind that desk. But anyway, he went to our district office, and so I think some of it has been they grow a ministry and people come and take talent away. I think another part of it is, that's just the nature of pastoring is at least in the modern era, the average stay of a senior pastor is around 3 to 4 years.
Really?
Yeah, and it takes 3 to 4 years to turn a church at minimum. At maximum, it takes about 7 years. So somewhere between 3 and 7 years, the church becomes like yours. They start associating you with the pastor. But the first 3 years are the hardest.
Yeah.
So what I teach my staff right now is we're kind of on this bell curve. We've come out of the honeymoon period, and we're moving into years 2 and 3, and that's where you have to have the most grit to push through and really see change accomplished. So I think some of it is well-known pastors starting well-known ministries, and some of it has been the grind of having being a pastor in Bakersfield, and everything in between.
Yeah, I'd imagine that after 101 years, systems, processes, change is something that's not something they're super keen to. So how's that been? You're forward thinking. I said, I think of you as a thought leader in the space. So how has that been walking into a place that's...
Oh, it's hard.
Yeah.
I joke and I say, it's a 101-year-old church with 101-year-old problems.
Right.
But that's true. So systems and policy are, Andy Stanley said this, so I didn't say this. They're scar tissue of the organization. And so, you have policy after policy after policy that has been developed because something went wrong in the past, right? So, a pastor does something stupid. Let's say he overspends. So a board puts in policy and goes, okay, we're going to keep the future pastors from ever spending, and they cap them at a certain point. Sure. Well, that's something you have to uncover, develop, coach through, and just change. And it's everywhere throughout Bakersfield First. It is, again, a 101-year-old church with all this scar tissue that you just have to continue to break away, like you do with scar tissue. I've had shoulder surgery, I've had elbow surgery, and part of therapy, when you do physical therapy, they're breaking up, that buildup. Yeah. And so that's really what I've had to do, at least for this first year. And you have to actually, so I have another phrase that not mine, somebody else's, but seek to understand before being understood. So what I've had to do is go in and just listen and try to hear people's stories of why this was the way it was. And then you have to develop a certain amount of trust for them to trust you to change those things. So it's a process, and it's not an easy process, but you have to, I think systems are the engine of the church. And if you don't have the right systems, then everything that you build will collapse.
Yeah, 100%. And I love your analogy of temporary solutions for problems that are probably temporary as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what's happened in our past, in our church's past, is guys have come in and put Band-Aids on things, and instead of excising the cancer. And I think you just have to do the deep work to go, no, we've got to do this. So part of it is having a little bit of grit. Some of it is, I think, being stubborn. And we've talked before that it's important to not just make the right decisions, but make the right decisions in the right time. Yeah. I think that's the key to seeing proper change.
I would say my next question would be like, why now? Why is BFA open to you coming in and shaking things up? And clearly it's been successful. So why was it the right time
Yeah, I wonder about that too. I think so. I assess churches this way. They don't really want change until they start losing people and they start losing money. And really, they don't care about the people. They care about the money. BFA's an anomaly though, because they've had money in the bank. They're very stable financially. But I think as they've gotten older, and we're tilting older, we're starting to move younger. The longer we go on, this thing will move younger. But I think they started recognizing that unless they make a change, the last person to die, please leave the key under the mat. And so you have to change, and it doesn't mean you have to do radical stuff. I think you have to be forward-facing. So I've been reading this book. It's on the early church, and the idea behind the early church was all about patience, right? As a matter of fact, in the first 3 centuries of the early church, they write nothing about evangelism, nothing. Which is shocking because the amount of growth that's happening in the first 3 centuries is amazing.
Wow.
But what they're focused on is patience. Let God do a patient work in your life, and He will do a patient work in the church, and then fruit comes from it.
Wow.
And I think that's the process that you have to go through with the church, is you have to be patient.
Yeah.
I meet with my CFO every week. You know my CFO. And he's always like, what's the next step? What's the next bullet?
Yeah.
How do we get this thing off the ground? And I use this analogy today. We're like Howard Hughes's plane, the Hercules. If you're familiar with Howard Hughes, he built this massive, massive plane. And it takes forever to get off the ground. And that's what it's like pastoring a 101-year-old church. It's massive, massive, massive. So you have to be patient, and you have to build enough runway so it can get off the ground. So we've seen modest growth. We've seen modest growth in our income, modest growth in our attendance. But what we've seen more than anything is a change in culture.
Wow.
And I think you have to change culture before the growth comes. And so what I told him today, we were talking, and he was like, how are we going to, continue to grow? And I said, look, this thing will get off the ground eventually, but it just takes time, and most guys aren't patient. That's why they leave in year 3. They're not patient to see the thing through.
Yeah, because I'm sure you get in there and you're able to see everything that's wrong, or that they're not doing that they should be doing.
Yeah.
So how do you balance knowing the problem and even knowing the solution, and not just racing to solve the problems, and balance, having that patience that it takes to get the team with you?
Well, what I always say to our staff is that we have to recognize that things are very healthy, but they're very fragile, right? So, an egg can be very healthy, but if it moves off the counter or the table, it can break.
Sure.
And so I always say no sudden movements. No sudden movements. We've got to take people along the journey, and you have to build guiding coalitions. You have to give vision for people to follow you, and some of it is discernment. We've done some pretty large changes that need to happen, but again, I'm pulling out change in my pocket. I'm putting my finger to the wind, and I'm going, it's the right time in this moment. And it's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of conversations. And I also think you do your best. I think from a leadership perspective, my number one leadership principle is let your yeses be yeses and nos be nos.
100%.
Tell the truth. Yeah. And that's going to get you a lot of change in your pocket. And I think a lot of pastors and leaders, they, for lack of a better term, they live a life of just being bullcrap artists, and and people see through that. And so when they see through that, they don't want to trust you. Yeah. And it takes a lot of trust to lead change.
Yeah, being authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've wondered about that, and that was one of the things I wanted to dig into, because we talked about the difference between like church planting or going into a church that's generational, and the difference in leadership. I mean, church planting, you're running at 100 miles per hour. It's like, keep up, guys.
You start like you're already on the runway before you have the first service, right? You've built your team, you've built your culture.
We say we're building the engine when the plane's in the air, right?
Right, but with a church like mine, everybody's on the plane, and some people go, we want to go to Chicago. Other people are going, we want to go to Dallas. Other people are like, we want to go to Atlanta. The difference between church planting and church revitalization, I think, is church planting, you've already gotten on the plane. Yeah, it's a little rickety, but you know where you're going. In church revitalization, the plane might look phenomenal. We have a phenomenal campus. It all needs to be renovated, but we have massive amounts of space, right? We have all of this stuff, but the challenge with church revitalization is making sure that everybody's ticket says the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest challenge, I think.
How have you managed that? One person wants to go to Chicago, one person wants to go to Tennessee. I'm sure there's been offense and people leaving the church that maybe were even staple members of the church. Yeah. How have you balanced that? How have you come to reason with that? What's been your process there?
Yeah. So the biggest difference between my first pastorate and my second pastorate, right, is I've learned what pain I can deal with. So, I had in my other church, I had a staff member that I knew day one needed to go. I just knew it. This is back in Grapevine. He stayed with me for 5 years, and it hurt the growth of the church. He wasn't a bad person. He just wasn't the right fit. And so I determined when I got here, I can either deal with the pain now or deal with the pain later, right? So, that's been my approach. So, back when I was pastoring in Dallas at 40, if I walked through the auditorium and somebody says, Pastor, why don't we sing that song anymore? I really love that song. That's my favorite song. I would have gone, hey, let me check into that. Yeah, we'll have that on the next deal, because I'm trying to be a people pleaser. Right. Now, if somebody says something like that, I just go, well, yeah, we're just not going to do that anymore. That's not the direction we're going to go. And
it's almost like a confidence in where we're going.
Yeah, you have to. You have to, because especially in a church like this, everybody has their own idea of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
At music is the same. So I have this theory that we typically think the most sacred music we listen to is the music we were listening to when we got saved. So for me, it's like Shout to the Lord, 1994, Darlene Check, Hillsong, like that's sacred to me. And for others, it may be What a Friend We Have in Jesus, or it may be some of the newest music. So, but that's how everybody thinks. They think in terms of themselves, their own salvation, all of this stuff, and you have to just you have to preach. You have to give them a vision of what it's going to be like for their kids and grandkids, right? So I have to inspire your grandpa or your wife's grandpa, who's in my church, to, hey, we're building this thing for you guys, even though you don't go to our church, right? We're building it for people like you because we want to see their kids and grandkids come to Christ. So it's just, you just have to be patient with it. You have to be patient with people. I think likability goes a long way. So I try to be a man of the people.
Sure.
Because you have to, people have to see you and talk to you and make conversation. It's hard to tell me no. When I'm having lunch with them or I'm playing golf with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not being manipulative. It's just all of a sudden we're in relationships, so they know, hey, pastor's a good guy.
They see your heart versus just, oh, this is what we're doing now. Deal with it, or figure 100%. It out or ship out kind of thing. So That makes sense. And I'm sure there's probably a ton, and it seems to be a tension that's managed pretty frequently with pastoring, of like, well, they're the people that are paying the bills. They're the tithers, so you don't want to offend them. So especially when you're young. And I know being at a legacy church like BFA, I'm sure that's happened in the past. And
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure there have been people who have walked in the door and said, hey, here's my tithe check. If you do this, I'm sure that happens in legacy churches. But here's what I've learned. Again, this is I think BFA needed somebody who had pastored before. And because I've learned a lot of lessons from that first pastorate. So I was always stressed out over money at the first church. Always stressed out, worried. How are we going to make the bills? How are we going to pay our payroll? All this kind of stuff. Well, I left, and the church has declined a little bit, dipped a little bit, from a numeric standpoint, but they're still able to pay the bills because it's God's church.
Yeah.
And so if I treat it as that, if I treat it as a steward, then it doesn't matter if you're $1 million giver and you go, hey, this isn't my bag. Pastor, if you would just do X, Y, Z, I'll stay and I'll give you my money. Hey, listen, it's not your church. It's not my church. It's God's church. So it's His responsibility. It's His responsibility to fund it.
Yeah.
It's His responsibility, honestly, to grow it. So it's the whole Paul planted, Apollos watered, God brings a harvest. So what we have to do is focus on the right inputs, and God will bring the outputs.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about, so I think last time we spoke, and if my calculations are correct, but since you've taken over, the church has probably grown about 30-40%, would you say? Or?
Not quite. No. Probably, 10 to 15.
Okay.
So over the last 4 years, it's been in a steady kind of growth mode, but we've pushed it to about 10 to 15%. We're seeing our spikes higher. So, a couple of Sundays ago, we were the highest Sunday we've had, we're pushing close to 600 that Sunday. So, for me, I focus on health input and let the numbers kind of fall where they are.
Sure.
But it's more, finances are up, people are up, salvations are up, baptisms are up.
And I don't bring that up to like quantify success.
Right.
My question was going to be more along the lines of what have been some of those key knobs that you've turned that have caused the growth, that you've seen the uptick in a youthful presence. What have been those key knobs that you've been turning?
So I think I have some I don't think they're radical philosophies, but I do think they're important philosophies. So I think we see this massive movement right now moving towards Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholicism, particularly in young people. I saw an article this morning that talked about it, that young men are attracted to, the rigors of like Eastern Orthodox. So I think that the church needs to not be less sacred, but more sacred, especially Protestant churches. We have created our spaces to be auditoriums and not sanctuaries.
Right.
And communion is not sacred as much anymore. And preaching ends up being TED Talks.
Like the pendulum swung so far in the opposite direction that now it's starting to balance.
Yeah, and so you see this real hunger for theological things. I wrote about it in a dissertation 10 years ago when I was writing my doctorate, that George Barna started picking up on some things with younger generations, saying that they don't sense the presence of God in church anymore, and they identify with stained glass, and they haven't learned anything new in church the last time they went. Nothing new about God. So there was this, with the millennial generation, they were starting to sense it, like, what's the point of going to church? It feels like I could watch a leadership podcast and hang out with my own friends and get the same thing that I'm getting in church.
Sure.
So there's a move back towards the sacred. So I think that's part of it. So I think people want to know some stuff about theology. I think that's a hunger for there. I think they want some sacredness to it. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is, especially with BFA, is they had just been going through the motions in kids ministries and youth ministries, and maybe not investing as much as they could. So we've reinvested in those things, which are really, really important. I think that having a fresh face, a younger face, I'm 50, but I don't think I look 50.
Not at all.
And so I think that's attractional. And I think we've tried to engage people outside the four walls. So I have a website called Bible for Grownups. So we have an essentials class on there, introduction to theology class that I teach at the college level that's on there, a series called Bible for Grownups, which is a hermeneutics class, interpreting the Bible class, blogs. Me and my wife have our own podcast, and so we're just trying to engage on so many different levels. But I think I think it's been everything, right? It's not one silver bullet. Like I tell our team, is we're up and to the right. We're heading the right direction. The growth hasn't, I wish I could come in here and go, man, we have grown 30 to 40%. That's amazing. But no, I think it's the inputs, because I think that's part of the problem. And I know you weren't saying that.
No.
But I think part of our problem in the church world is we go, man, if we don't grow by 30 to 40%, man, we're not doing anything. I think it's slow and steady wins the race. What I tell my guys is, if we can get 5 to 12% growth every year with new converts, and then we're winning. We're gonna win at the end of the day. And for me, I also focus on church health, and I think that's also an engine of growth, because people are desperately needing some sort of transformation in their life every day.
Sure.
And so they want to know that the relationship isn't transactional. I'm not saying, hey, Trent, come to my church so you're another body. I'm saying, hey, Trent, come to my church, because when you come to the church, you're going to become a better disciple.
Right.
I read this morning, Cyprian of Carthage, 256 AD. The greatest quote. If I don't have a tattoo, but if I was going to get a tattoo, it would be this. He used to tell the church, and I don't think the quote originated with him, but he used to tell the church, we don't tell great stories, we live them. And so what I want in our church is, I don't want them to talk about a good story. I want them to truly be living for Jesus. I want them to be transformational in the community. And I think that message resonates.
Yeah, and I love your focus too on the kids ministries and things like that, because I think ultimately people are just longing to have a place to belong and feel taken care of. And there's a story that Pastor Alberto, my pastor, talks about, that a family showed up to Easter, and they had a deaf daughter, or they have a deaf daughter. And he struck up a conversation with the parents. They were first-time guests, and they were like, it's been the hardest. We've had the hardest time finding a church with ASL. Not just for adults, because there'll be an interpreter in sanctuary, but for my daughter, where she can't go to Sunday school and learn the Sunday school lessons like everybody else, because there's not that resource for her kid. And he felt so convicted about that, and he left, and we started an ASL program for kids at our church. So, and that family has joined our church. They've been a huge part of our church. They brought people to the church because they're like, wow, we feel like we belong here, and we have a place that's safe for our daughter. So that emphasis, that focus is, very important, I think.
Yeah, I think whether you're, it's the Tommy Barnett thing. You see a need and you fill it.
Right.
And I think that's what you have to do in any and every circumstance. So, like For you guys, it might be an ASL program. For us, it might be, hey, how do we really reach the homeless population and the underserved population? And you just, because I think what happens in podcast and in church growth world is, and I've been there, you go to a conference and you get inspired and you're like, man, that's awesome. And then you go, well, I can't do any of that. I don't have the people. I don't have the resources. So I think for the guys listening to this who are pastoring, churches that may not have all the resources, just look locally and go, what can I do? How can I feel that? And how can I be a little bit unique? And I think my preaching style is a little bit unique. I think being theological right now is a little bit unique. I think our sanctuary looking like a sanctuary is a little bit unique. I think the pendulum is swinging back to where people want to feel sacred when they walk into church. They want to feel the presence of God, even in the architecture and the way the building is laid out.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. How have you, if you're having people come in the front door, how have you regulated people slipping through the cracks or kind of, how have you closed that back door?
We haven't closed it. We're closing it.
Sure.
So again, it's a system. So I hired an associate pastor, and people may not have the resource to hire an associate pastor, but so you could do it with a volunteer. What we're basically doing is we're creating a system where for 6 weeks, everybody's signing the book. They sign the old school, we're going to put our name down, and it's section driven. Mm-hmm. And the reason we're doing that is everybody tends to sit in the same section.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you and your wife go to church, you sit in the same spot almost
every week.
Every week, right? Yeah. So what we're trying to do is see, okay, who's in each section. We're doing it through a 6 to 8 week period, because that's kind of we're seeing growth, probably closer to the 15 to 20% growth, but the frequency's off, right? People are giving you one time every 6 weeks. So we're doing it 6 to 8 weeks. Once we do that, we'll build a database of every section, who's sitting in what section, and then we have section captains who are sitting in the auditorium. They identify who's new in the section and who's missing. Wow. Right? So if you've been gone, like people are going to take vacation, people are going to be sick, all that kind of stuff. So we don't like actively track people down every week, but if you were gone 2 or 3 weeks in a row, you're getting a phone call, you're getting a text. Yeah. So what I've challenged our team to do, and my pastoral care guy, my associate pastor, really believes this. We want to be the best at pastoral care in the state of California. That's what we want to be known for. So we're building the database now where we can make sure that we're connecting the right people and being aware of when people are gone. Once you get, like I've pastored smaller churches, you could probably do it in your mind at about 50 to 100, but after 100, you're going to miss people. Yeah. And so we're just creating a system that will tighten the net of people leaving out the back door.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How important have systems been in all of it?
It's radically important. So first year in pastoring, it's all about stabilizing. Like you're trying to keep the boat from rocking where you can walk. And then the next 2 or 3 years is all about building the right systems of processing people. How do you do discipleship? How do you get people to the right pathways so that they can grow and experience God? You can't do any of that without a system. Yeah. So systems are the wheels on the car or the gas in the car, whatever metaphor you want to use. The car's not moving without a system.
Yeah, totally. Wrapping up, is there anything that, what encouragement or advice maybe a new pastor or a pastor who's struggling to make change in their current situation? What advice can you give them from your experience?
Yeah, so I would read Angela Duckworth's book. It's a secular book on grit, because it's going to take a certain level of grit. Don't underestimate the power of prayer, especially with boards and church membership and things like that. People are persnickety, and that's okay, but pray and pray and pray and pray. Be likable. I think the one example we can get from Jesus was always amongst the people. So be amongst the people. Don't hide out in your office.
Yeah.
Shake people's hands. Go to dinner with people. Buy them a Coke or a coffee, and just hang with people.
Yeah.
And be likable. And then just you got to persevere. You know, Paul said, "I've learned to be content with having a lot or little." And so, and the last part of that is, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength.
Right.
So you can endure this, and you can push through this, and just stay, right? A lot of times we give up. I've given up in the past. There are obvious reasons why we left our church. Our church in Grapevine was wonderful. They treated us well, although my season was up. But I sometimes go, man, if I was still there, I would be going into my 12th year. What would we have accomplished in 12 years, et cetera, et cetera? And so I would say plant, like dig deep roots in your community and plant. And bloom where you're planted, I think is what I'm trying to say, because I think God honors longevity. The heroes in my life now are not the guys who are growing a church from 0 to 100,000. It's the guys who've been faithful to work for 30 or 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the most admirable things you can be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And compliment here. I've been part of, at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and stuff like that, my wife's grandparents go to your church, and I've heard some of the behind-the-scenes stories and stuff, and they absolutely love you. So
Thank you. I love them.
Yeah, they're
I
great.
think your grandpa's at my office installing a bookshelf right now.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, he can do it all, man.
Yeah.
But I say that because, I didn't think this, but based on some of the things I've heard, I'm like, man, it's past the point of redemption.
Yeah.
And
you're not the only one who thought that. There were a lot of people who thought that, for sure, around Assembly of God circles.
Compliments to you for going in there and proving everybody wrong. It's
Thank you.
very inspiring. I love to see how your story's progressing and the church is going, and maybe we'll get to do this again. And,
Sure.
We'll be at a whole new milestone and talk about a whole different set of problems and solutions that you figured out. So, but thank you for taking the time, Pastor Jason.
Absolutely.
It means a lot. You can tune in all the places you get podcasts. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.